Welcome to the Pac-12 Preview Show. I'm Brandon Shanahan. This is part of our Power 5 preview series on the Cornhusker Connection network on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you enjoy podcasts. Every day this week, we're talking about a different Power 5 conference and going through week by week and predicting every single game for every single team. I like this format. First of all, it's very in-depth. We don't miss anything. We don't leave a stone unturned. And I think it's also beneficial because I think a lot of people, when they do like a season by season preview kind of thing, they kind of just look at a team and like, oh, this team looks like a 10-win team. This team looks like a 4-win team. And then they kind of work their way backwards to make that number work, where there's so much context within the season, week by week, where I feel like a lot gets missed in that way. With that, we're not going to miss here on this show. The Pac-12, I'm super excited about. They're probably going to be my favorite conference to watch this year. Granted, if I can stay up past 9 o'clock and watch some of these games, but it's an electric conference. Lots of good teams. Before we get into the week by week breakdown, I'll just kind of go over how I feel about each team going into the season. I haven't really given a full depth look at each team's schedule. That's what this whole show is for. But I did do some research, and here's kind of what my baseline is on each team. But before, like I said, the Pac-12 is going to be electric. And Joel Klatt said it best on his show. The conference is built for parity. Not for the college football playoff, though, unfortunately. There are so many good teams, including a handful of teams that are genuinely some of the best teams in the country. However, with the conference being so good and so deep, it's just so hard to envision somebody coming out of this conference with 11, 12 wins. But if there's going to be a team to do it, it might very well be Caleb Williams and the USC Trojans. Caleb Williams is a bad man. He's probably my favorite quarterback to watch since Johnny Manziel. And this USC team's a real contender. And if anybody is going to win a second Heisman Trophy, it might be Caleb Williams, but it will almost certainly be a Lincoln Riley quarterback. Just, process of probability. In order to do so, he'll have to outdo his insane stats from last year, and the team probably has to go undefeated, if not definite playoff stakes have had to be fulfilled. It's very well possible, not impossible, but they should take another step up as a team, specifically the defense. The offense, of course, is going to be electric when you have someone like Caleb Williams slinging it, but the defense should take a pretty good step back. They got 9 starters back. The only thing that I worry about trend-wise for the defense is that the team benefited from a plus 22 turnover margin last year, which is good last year, but it's just it's just a thing that's hard to replicate year to year. But if they can do that, then watch out. They're as good as anybody this side of the Mississippi for sure. Utah, the Achilles heel to USC last year, they're back. They're not going anywhere. Cam Rising is back to kind of put an exclamation point on what's been a phenomenal college football career for Cam Rising and his Utah legacy. Hopefully, maybe he gets that elusive Rose Bowl in the playoffs. That would line up pretty well. But they should be able to stick around the 36 point per game mark from last year's squad. There's no real indication they're going to trend downwards, and it's just hard to build upon 36 points per game. But if they're going to achieve what they want to achieve, it's going to be because the defense hits their stride. If they are as good as they hope it to be, if they do win the Pac-12, if they do compete for a playoff spot, it's because the defense is a top 10 defense, which is very well possible. Oregon, on the other hand, is kind of built in contrast to Utah. They're a very good team, but most of their experience and skill is going to come on the offensive side of the football. Bo Nix comes back, already putting up billboards in New York to get his name out there for the Heisman race. They do bring back 8 starters on the offensive side of the ball. The offense was awesome. Unfortunately, nobody really cared much about Oregon after they got blown out by Georgia in week 1. But they have a favorable schedule. They avoid the Bulldogs this year, which is a huge win for them and hopefully a good opportunity to build some momentum. Washington, they might be the best watching college football this year. I am so high on the Huskies. And if they hit their stride, they're a very real college football playoff contender. And if that's the case, Michael Penix Jr. is almost certainly in New York for the Heisman ceremony. This offense nearly doubled their points per game production to nearly 40 points per game last season. They bring back 7 starters, including Penix and 2 all Pac-12 wide receiver candidates. They're scary. They're going to be fun. I'm so excited about the Huskies. It might also just be the purple and gold that my eyes are so locked on to. But those 4 teams, I think, make up on paper the best 4 teams of any conference throughout the country, as they're all 4 possible national contenders. All 4 teams, I think, can compete at that level. But that's also why I think that probably none of them will make the college football playoff. Nobody really jumps that far ahead to create a big enough gap to finish 12-1 with the Pac-12 title. And it's crazy looking at these 4 teams and thinking at least 2 of them won't even be in the Pac-12 championship game. The next tier for the Pac-12, I think, is Oregon State leading the way, absolutely buzzing with momentum. First 10-win season since the Bush administration, back when they had former Husker coaching legend Mike Riley back in 2006. Last year, they blew out Florida 30-3. Fantastic way to put an exclamation point on what was a great season. Looking at some of the trends, there's nothing indicating that that team was a complete fluke. They'll certainly have to work hard to get back to that point, to get back to double-digit wins. Probably have to pull off a couple of upsets, but they're going to be fantastic again as well. UCLA. Replacing Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a tough task, and it'll be the first time in a long time that Chip Kelly's had to trust anybody else to lead his offense. Also, I found out that DTR finished just 13 career passing yards away from being UCLA's all-time passing leader, which is heartbreaking. 13 yards over a 5-year season, insane, insanely heartbreaking. But nonetheless, the Bruins have won more games each year than the previous one since Kelly's arrival, and this year will certainly be the toughest test of that trend, just because that number gets bigger year to year. I think they could do it. They'll need some stuff to work their way. Both them and Oregon State are really good teams, and I think in most any other year over the last 10 years or so, they could very well be Pac-12 contenders. But certainly this year, they'll need a couple of bounces to go their way. If they pull off an upset or two, they could very well be in the Pac-12 title hunt towards the end of the season. Now, the next tier of teams probably not going to win the Pac-12, but are going to make Pac-12 After Dark so fun. They'll likely be the teams pushing for a winning record and trying to get to a bowl game. Not all of them are going to make it, but that's kind of where these next group of Washington State new offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle likes to design big plays down the field, and they bring back quarterback Cam Ward, who's got the arm to deliver on that kind of return. Cal, I expect it to take a pretty good step up in the right direction. They had the ball fall the opposite way several times during their 4-8 campaign. They had 5 close losses that you got to think could go the other way. They also gave USC and UCLA fits to kind of show you how close they were to competing towards some of the better teams in this conference just a year ago. And they bring back 17 starters. So a lot of experience on this team. So hopefully they'll just have better luck in those close games, and that'll be the key to unlocking the potential of this Cal team. Arizona offense nearly jumped up 10 points per game last season. In the third year of the Jed Fish era, it should keep trending up. We'll see how big of a jump. 10 points seems pretty steep, but they bring back 8 starters. The defense is going to be the biggest question mark. They're going to be pretty vulnerable to the pass, especially considering all the great arm talent in this conference. But if they can just hang on, Arizona could possibly see a pretty good uptick from their 5 wins from last season. Now, these next 3 teams, I think, are going to be fighting to stay out of the basements. First is ASU, Arizona State. They had a brutal season last year, both on and off the field, with everything that happened with Herm Edwards, replacing their coach in the middle of the season, just rough stuff. The new slate and new era should bring some calmness, hopefully with first-year head coach Kenny Dillingham. Now, whether or not that leads to more on-field success is to be determined, and I think the reason why they're in this tier instead of the tier ahead of them is just because that's a huge question mark. Kenny's got some work to do. They're certainly best built to be the best out of these final 3 teams, but with the new coach, a new system, it could work in their favor if they experience some growing pains early on. Now, the final two teams are going to be pretty similar record-wise, I'd say, but trending in complete opposite direction. First, we'll talk about Colorado. It's prime time, baby. Let's go. After years of giving more players than receiving into the transfer portal because of academic restraints, the administration in Boulder has taken some pretty big steps to help out the football program stay evolved with this new transfer portal. And of course, hiring Coach Prime is a huge, it's certainly a bold decision for a school that hasn't made any big, bold moves at all in the last 15 years, maybe. Certainly no choices as prominent as Coach Prime. Certainly taking over the worst Power Five program will take some time. And even in the brightest timeline, it's going to take a couple of years to really start racking up the wins, but the stock is skyrocketing. And Stanford, like Colorado, they're not very good. Except the problem with Stanford is that they don't have the same kind of administration support that Colorado's gained over the last 12 months. Still really hard for transfers to come into Stanford. Not as hard for current Stanford players to leave and go to the transfer portal. So they're losing players left and right. They have new head coach Troy Taylor. Hopefully trying to generate some excitement like Coach Prime's able to do in Colorado. They only bring back 6 starters from their 3-9 team last season, and they could certainly be trending in the opposite direction for quite some time now, and very real chance that we've seen the best of Stanford in the rearview mirror, which is very sad to say, but college football and the decision makers not being kind to the Pac-12 to the Cardinals. But that's all I had for the for each team. So like I said, lots of good teams, lots of exciting stuff to get into. Let's start picking some games here. First, week 0 coming up this Saturday. USC and San Jose State. Luckily, we don't have to think very hard about that. That one's pretty easy. USC picks up the win there. They jumped to 8-1, or excuse me, 1-0 on the season. Week 2, things start to, or excuse me, week 1, week 2 for the slate, but week 1, Florida and Utah was a fantastic game last year. I think Utah is going to have a little bit easier time with the Gators this go around. I think the Gators take a step back, and I think Utah they take a step up. And traveling across the country like that's not easy, so I'll give that to Utah any day. Arizona State picks up a win against Southern Utah. Stanford picks up a rare win against Hawaii. Colorado and TCU. I live in DFW. I'm a Colorado fan deep down. I'm so excited for this matchup. However, I don't think it's going to be quite competitive. I think Colorado takes a big step up talent-wise, and I think TCU takes a big step down. But I still think that there's quite a bit of gap there. And of course, just with all the new pieces in Colorado, it's so tough to imagine them really stepping up here. Up next, Oregon and Portland State. Give me Oregon pretty easily there. Boise State, give me Washington to beat them. Cal and North Texas. Give me the Golden Bears over the Mean Green. I love the Mean Green. USC takes on Nevada, easy breezy. Colorado State and Washington State. Washington State picks up a big win here. Arizona and Northern Arizona. Give me Arizona. Coastal Carolina and UCLA. Give me the Bruins. And Oregon State and San Jose State. Yeah, give me the Beavers in that one. So there we go. Good week for the Pac-12. Everyone's still undefeated except for Colorado, having a tough opening game here. But things are going to get tough for the Pac-12 going forward here. So Nebraska and Colorado. I'm also a Nebraska fan. I know it's a conflict, but I'm super hyped for it. Everybody I know is hyped for it. Nebraska hasn't beaten Colorado in I think like 4,000 days or something, but I think they pick up the win in Boulder here. Matt Rule, I don't think is gonna. When you look at the last couple of matchups and very similar circumstances with bringing in a new coach and bringing in new players and ideally a new era. They were also in the same boat last time they played, but that Scott Frost team just really kind of gave those games away. And I don't think that Matt Rule is gonna do that. Baylor and Utah. Utah's a good team. I also like Baylor to make some noise in the Big 12. We'll do that conference early this week. But Utah, give me the Utes. Give me Washington over Tulsa. Wisconsin and Washington State, good game. Tough for a team to travel halfway across the country to Pullman. That's one of the rowdier crowds in the Pac-12. But Luke Fickell, I think, is going to pick up the win here against the Cougars. For Wisconsin to kind of achieve what they want to achieve and kind of elevate from what was already a previously pretty good football team. You got to win games like Washington State. Oregon and Texas Tech. Oregon also going Power 5 for the non-conference, so I respect that for sure. Texas Tech, I think, got gypped, getting left out of the rankings. I think people are underestimating them and their ability to make noise in the Big 12. But this is such a must. I mean, all these games for all of those top 4 Pac-12 teams are must wins in the sense that you need a feast on the non-conference early and often. So I think Oregon just knows. I think they just have more at stake in that game. Then that brings us to another Power 5 matchup, Arizona and Mississippi State. I think I'm not very high on Mississippi State with the new coach implementing a new system. But I guess I'll give them the home field and the SEC bump here against the Wildcats. And then UC Davis and Oregon State. Give me the Beavs. Arizona State and Oklahoma State. Give me the Cowboys. They got some question marks. Returning from this year. What are they going to do at quarterback now that Spencer Sanders is gone? But nonetheless, I think that they're in a little bit better of a state here. Should have meant to make that red. Oklahoma State's going to win that game. Cal and Auburn. Like I said, I think Cal takes a step up. I don't think this is where we get to see it. Probably just giving Auburn more credit just being in the SEC. I think they're probably a 6-win team. Cal's probably a 6-win team or so. And so SEC bias gets in the way here. USC and Stanford in Southern California. Give me the Trojans to pick up the first win of the Pac-12 slate. That's going to wrap up week 3. Lots of good stuff coming up here. Lots of other good matchups here for the Pac-12. Let's see here. Weber State and Utah. Utes, I can't imagine have too much to worry about there. Oregon State picks up a win against probably future conference foe San Diego State. Cal picks up a win over the Vandals of Idaho. Michigan State and Washington. Oh boy, love this game. Michigan State's coming off a down year, 5-7 last year after giving Mel Tucker $1 billion to not make bowl games. Lost some pretty big transfers. East Lansing isn't an easy place to play by any means, but give me Washington there. UCLA over North Carolina Central. A lot of these teams just an opportunity to feast here, pick up as many wins as they can, especially teams like Washington State, Cal, Stanford, because once Pac-12 play starts, they may not be as many opportunities for that. Colorado picks up their first win of the Coach Prime era after dropping their first 2 good opponents in the first couple of games for Colorado, but they can finally feast and kind of show what this Prime team is supposed to look like. But they pick up a win against Colorado State pretty easy. Arizona State beating Fresno State and Arizona over UTEP. So now as you start to get into Pac-12 play, also worth noting, USC had a bye in week 3, and they don't get a bye until week 13. So they basically don't get to rest until the week before the Pac-12 championship game. So 9 straight games against FBS teams. We'll see how that works out. Best team in the conference, but whoever put that schedule together, I mean, that's malpractice. That is brutal. But nonetheless, we got another slate here, Arizona and Stanford. Give me Arizona over Stanford. USC over Arizona State. USC fresh off the bye. Yeah, give me them. Even on the road, I don't think that they have much struggle here. California and Washington. Like I said, I think the Golden Bears are on the up and up. I don't think Washington's where they're able to really show that off. Oregon and Colorado, or Colorado kind of comes back down to earth after beating up on Colorado State. So give me Oregon there, Washington State, and Oregon State. Give me. Whoa. These are two pretty like teams. I like Oregon State a little bit more. I know it's in Pullman. It's not an easy place to play, but not an easy place to play. So that's tough. Utah and UCLA, give me the Utes. By this point, I still think UCLA could still be dealing with some growing pains of the new signal caller. I don't think Utah has much trouble with them. Oregon State and Utah, give me Utah. They should be able to win. I don't think Corvallis is a tough place to play. I got to stop saying that. Tough place to play. Tough place to yeah, I can't do it. It's a tough stadium to play. Let's try that. Washington and Arizona. Give me the Dogs. California and Arizona State. Oh, that's a good one. California and Arizona State. Give me the Golden Bears. Give me the Golden Bears. I think this is a close one that their experience kind of trickles them over the edge there. USC and Colorado. Give me. Oh boy, my gut wanted to say give me Colorado, but do not give me Oregon and Stanford. Give me the Ducks. Quack quack. You know what I think would be fun for Oregon? Like a home field advantage kind of thing, is instead of just like cheering or like booing when the opposing team does something good, why don't you just start quacking? Like, how intimidating would that be as a opposing quarterback coming into Eugene? You practice with crowd noise, but you don't practice for quacks. 80,000 people quacking at you. I don't know. Just take that under advisement. Arizona, USC. Give me USC. Colorado and Arizona State. Both first-year head coaches. To this point, I think I'm going to give Colorado the benefit of the doubt. I think at this point, they're probably more battle-tested than Arizona State's, playing TCU, playing Nebraska, playing Oregon and USC already in the season. I think they're battle tested, and I think when they get on the field with Arizona, it'll feel like they're playing in a different league. So I think that'll kind of be the difference there. I don't anticipate Colorado doing too much else throughout the season, just because then I think we're in week 6. Depth is probably going to creep in as a concern. Their best player plays 2 ways. I don't know how sustainable that is. I mean, he was hurt most of the year last year anyways. But I think they steal one here in Tempe. Cal and Oregon State. You know what? Give me the Golden Bears. Give me the Golden Bears. I don't feel too great about this one, but overall, I gotta lean on my research. I think Oregon State's taking a slight step down. I think Cal's taking a big step up. I think, who does Oregon State play next week? Oregon State plays UCLA. Could possibly be overlooking Cal. Might think that this is the same Cal team from a year ago. Not so much the case here. And I think UCLA takes care of business against Washington State. So Stanford and Colorado. This is, other than Colorado State, this is probably the game I feel the best about for the Buffaloes. And watch out, 2-game win streak. Watch out for the Golden Buffaloes. And then from here, Washington State. Give me them over Arizona. Feels like a Pac-12 after dark game. Utah and Cal. Give me the Utes. Oregon and Washington. Here we go. These are the kind of games that are going to determine not just the fate of each of these teams as far as like the conference championship goes, but also determining the conference's fate for like playoff viability. Washington and Oregon at Husky Stadium in Seattle. Probably, if it's not big noon on Fox, it'll be prime time. Washington's a tough stadium to play. See, we're getting better. I think it's a shootout. And who do I trust in a shootout? I think I trust Michael Penix more. I trust Michael Penix more than I trust Bo Nix. If it's in Eugene, maybe I give that to the Ducks, but it's not. So don't have to worry about that. Oregon State, I think they bounce back, beat up on UCLA. Or I shouldn't say beat up on, but I think they take care of business. USC, a tough one. On the road to Notre Dame, and also worth mentioning next week, look who they play. USC, their Achilles heel. But I don't. I think the talent gap is probably too big for Notre Dame to overcome. So give me USC. It says NBC. So does NBC do primetime games? Maybe. I don't know. But nonetheless, that should be fun. I'm excited. I think Notre Dame's going to be good this year. So that should be fun. Up next, week 8, Arizona State and Washington. I think Washington keeps humming without issues. I think this could be an upset game. You come off a big win against Oregon. Arizona State's just desperate for wins at this point. Could be upset alert. I like I said, I don't think that the talent's very comparable. So nothing that I think that we have to worry about there. Washington State and Oregon. Give me Oregon at home, bouncing back. Every game means a lot more now because you just can't afford to drop another one if you're going to be in the college football playoff. And I know this Oregon team has CFP aspirations. USC takes care of business against Stanford. And then the game of the week here. Let's figure out where the color red is. Utah and USC. Utah, the Achilles heel to USC last year before the bowl game. 2-0 against Caleb Williams and the Utah Utes, or in the USC Trojans. You know what? I'm just going to say, based on probabilities, like Utah might be a better team than USC, but I just think it is less likely or more unlikely than it is that Utah beats Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley 3 straight times. And I probably give this game to Utah if USC splits them last year, but I don't think Utah 3 times in a row. That's a big ask. And again, that's not like football analysis. That's just probabilities. Like my biggest win in sports betting history, story time, was Tom Brady versus Drew Brees in the playoffs. The first 2 games throughout the season, Drew Brees looked like 10 times the quarterback of Tom Brady. This was his first year in Tampa Bay, I believe. Just uncompetitive games, but I felt so good about Tom Brady in the playoffs, betting on the Bucs, just because I don't care who you are, you're not beating Tom Brady 3 times in a season. Bucs ended up winning that game. I got a new car. So everybody won there. So I'm kind of using that same kind of logic here. Right, I just 3 times in a year, Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. If there's a team built to beat Utah or to beat USC 3 times in a row, it is Utah. But I mean, I'm just gonna go against that probability there. Oregon State and Arizona. Give me Oregon State, the Beavs. Whoops. Washington State and Arizona State. Oh, this is a good one. Ah, man, I want to give this one to Arizona State. I really don't think they're going to be that bad. Wait, what did I say? No, they win. Arizona loses. I don't think Arizona State's going to be that bad, but I also don't think they're going to be better than Washington State. I'm sorry. USC and Cal. USC. Whoops. Well, both can't lose that game. I'm losing my mind here. USC and Cal. Give me the Trojans. They're still undefeated. Colorado and UCLA. Colorado's winning streak is officially ended. Man, it's tough to find them another win throughout the season, but we'll see. Utah and Oregon. I mean, this will tell us what Utah brings to the table on because this is a program defining game. I think not like this program makes or breaks Utah, but this kind of game will tell us what this Utah program is. Going to USC and then hosting Oregon the very next week, that's a tough ask. Only really good teams can survive that and kind of hang in there, especially with the stakes on the line. I think they do. I think they do bounce back. I think they're built for this moment. And I think that their defense is able to keep them in it, and Cam Rising probably comes through late with some heroics. So Utah bounces back. Oregon picks up their first loss of the season, if I'm not mistaken. Washington and Stanford, the easy breezy. Give me the dogs. Give me the dogs. Week 10, boy, we are getting after it here, huh? So week 10. So let's see here. So let's see here. So the 4 teams are still kind of in the mix at the top. We have USC still undefeated. Washington still undefeated. Utah with just the 1 loss. Oregon just with the 1 loss. Oregon has 1 loss. No, Oregon has 2 losses. They lost to Washington in week 7. Then they lose to Utah in week 9. So no more slip ups for Oregon. So we got USC in first place, Washington in second place, then Utah, then Oregon. So lots of good stuff going on there. I do expect this to come down to the very last game of the season, whoever ends up coming out. Week 10, UCLA and Arizona. I like UCLA. You know, I'm gonna go against my gut here. I think this is a game that Arizona has circled on their calendar where they're like, all right, well, we're not beating Washington, we're not beating USC. We can beat UCLA, and I think they do. Utah and Arizona State, give me the Utes. I do kind of feel bad about Arizona State. I feel like I'm being extra harsh on them. Oregon and Cal, give me the Ducks. Quack quack quack. And especially now they're in desperation. They got 2 losses. They're probably out of the Pac-12 or the CFP race. There's an avenue if they beat Utah or Washington in the Pac-12 playoff, because then you think, okay, well, they got 2 losses. They are conference champions, and they avenged one of their losses. So you see that they've gotten better since that loss, whether it be to Washington or to Utah. So you got an opportunity there. So they're not totally toast, but I mean, they got to really put their foot on the gas pedal and win pretty good here. Give me Oregon State. Give me Oregon State here. On the road, Folsom Field, doesn't matter. Washington State and Stanford. Give me Washington State. Sorry, Stanford. I don't feel that bad about Stanford. And I don't feel as bad about Stanford as I do Arizona State. I feel like it can be very harsh to Arizona State just because they have a first-year head coach. But we'll see. USC and Washington. Oh, boy. Hold on. Hold the floor here. So USC gets Washington this week. Okay, they got Cal. Okay, so in a 4-week span, they go to Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana, one of the historically great rivalries in college football. They go to Notre Dame. Then they get right back to work against Utah, their Achilles heel from last season. And then they play Cal. And then they play Washington. And again, they haven't had a bye since week 3. So that's already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is their 7th straight game since that bye week. I can't give this to USC. Washington's way too good. And if fatigue's going to start setting in, I think, for the Trojans here in the schedule and just the way that they have to. This is a tough schedule. This is a brutally logistics. Whoever made this schedule did not have USC's best interest at heart. That is for sure. Washington picks up the win. And now Washington comes into first place in the Pac-12. So they're in first place. USC still in second place with 1 loss. Utah still has 1 loss. USC has the head-to-head. And then Oregon's right there with 2 losses. So they need some chips to fall their way. But, man, that is brutal. That one feels easy, which is crazy to think. All right, Arizona and Colorado. Give me Arizona. Yeah, give me the Wildcats. I think, I just went on a whole tangent about fatigue and depth for. Oh, geez, I got that totally wrong. Fatigue and depth for USC and their schedule, and I think Colorado has even bigger depth issues than USC. So I think my gut wants to pick them. This feels like a winnable game for them, but I think at this point, week 11, I mean, it's unlikely that they're still 100% healthy, and if they're even a little bit injured, it's tough. UCLA and Arizona State. Give me the Bruins. They bounce back. Cal and Washington State. This feels like one of those 50-50 games that Cal would have lost last year. I think they win this year. Washington State drops one back. Pretty much knocks them out of the Pac-12 race here. USC and Oregon. Oh my God. So let's recap here. Week 7, they go to South Bend, Indiana, play Notre Dame. And then they come back, play the defending back-to-back Pac-12 champions in Utah. Then they get Cal. And then they host Washington, Michael Penix Jr., and that electric, hungry offense, and one of the hottest teams in college football. And then they're rewarded with that murderer's row with a road game in Eugene. There's no way. I love USC. I love the Trojans. I love Lincoln Riley. I love Caleb Williams. There's no way. There's no way they've survived that slaughter. That fucking murderer's row of just good to great college football teams. Also, like I just said, this is now their 8th straight game playing. They haven't had a bye week since week 3, and they don't get another bye week for another 2 weeks. Yeah, I think USC is the best team in this conference, but that's a schedule I can't get behind. That's tough. Oregon State takes care of Stanford. I do feel good about that one. And now Utah and Washington. This is a big game, folks. This is a big game. So now how the standings look. Let's say USC and Oregon play at 3 o'clock. So now both these teams are going into this game. Washington's in first place. Utah's in second place. So this is already a pretty. You can make a very good case that this is a Pac-12 preview of the championship game. And then Oregon in third place now because now they have 2 losses. So does USC. Oregon gets the tiebreaker. I think with that information, and I think knowing that these teams know what's at stake, give me the Utes. Give me the Utes. I think that they know that they have their destiny in their hands. They have the opportunity to go to the Pac-12 championship game. They have an opportunity to win the Pac-12 championship and still have a chance to make the college football playoff with 1 loss. Washington could still lose this game and make the playoff. Utah can't, I don't think. So I think Utah, just out of desperation, knowing what's at stake, I think they come through here. Utah's in first place in the Pac-12, then Washington, then Oregon, then USC. And it's a tough slate for USC and Oregon as we enter into week 12. This is USC's last game. And so they get just bent over with the bye weeks. They get a bye in week 3 and a bye week in week 13. So this is their last game of the season. They need a lot to happen here. So we'll kind of go in. We'll save them for last. Well, they're also last in order here. So Colorado and Washington State. I feel like I've given pretty good benefit to the doubt to Colorado, but I don't think this is the opportunity for that. Arizona, Utah's on a tear. Oregon knows what's at stake. They're not going to get tripped up by Arizona State. Sorry, Arizona State. Gosh, I feel so. I don't think Arizona State's that bad. I mean, I know I put them in the bottom tier and had a bunch of question marks about them, but I mean, well, I'm not going to pick them to beat Oregon, that's for sure. Cal and Stanford. Give me. You know what? I'm going to give Stanford a bone. I think they pull this one off, and I think it's the momentum that this program needs. I don't think they're a better football team, but if I'm throwing them a bone, it might just be excess pity from Arizona State, and then Washington and Oregon State. Washington now has that newfound sense of urgency. We're like, all right, well now we can't slip up anymore. So here we go. USC and UCLA. So they would have needed. So now they're out because they would have needed Oregon and Washington to have lost. Because then that would drop Oregon to 3 losses in the conference. And then that would have dropped Washington down to 2 losses with USC. But USC has the tiebreaker. Do they have the tiebreaker? USC fucking onslaught. Brutal schedule here. Okay, so no. Okay, so USC's out regardless. They still win here. This could very well, depending on how this UCLA team comes out, I think it is very possible that UCLA pulls off this upset, especially now that USC basically has nothing to play for. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to change that. I think UCLA pulls off the win here. I feel like with my SEC prediction, I was so unbold. I think that this is, yeah, I'll be a little bit bold. And also, I think USC is the best football team in this conference. I think they have probably the best coach. They definitely have the best quarterback. They have an improved defense. But I can't sign off on them not having 2 losses. And then I think at this point, they have less to play for. And UCLA is going to get way more satisfaction out of this win than USC is. Caleb Williams already not winning the Heisman. Already locked up to being the number 1 pick in the draft next year. There's nothing for him to play for anymore. He did it. Everything that he wanted to do as an individual, he got it. So that brings us to week 13. So let's take a quick stock here on the championship scenarios here. So USC's toast. They got 3 losses. So you got Oregon with 2 losses. Oregon lost to Washington and Utah. So Utah's toast. Or Oregon's toast. Because even if either of those 2 teams drop a game, they're still in the Pac-12 title game because they have the head-to-head over Oregon. I still think Oregon wins this game. Oregon gets disseminated from the list because they have nothing else to play for. Give me Arizona State and Utah. This is where I'm going to throw Arizona State a bone. I think that they probably have been playing well the last couple of weeks. They just have bad draws. And I think Arizona's not up to the competition that they played the last couple of weeks. This game, I think, is going to mean way more to Arizona State. Cal and UCLA. UCLA coming off a big win. Give me the Golden Bears. I like Cal. I think they pull off a win here. Colorado and Utah. Not much analysis needed there. Unfortunately, Stanford and Notre Dame. Stanford picked up the win last year. Not going to do it this year. Sorry, Stanford. Washington State and Washington. Washington, I mean, they got their eyes on the prize. They have a playoff spot probably waiting for them. They're not going to get tripped up by Washington State here. That's it. That's week 13. Let me take a look here at the final standings. So now that brings us to the final Pac-12 standings here. We have Utah 11-1, Washington 11-1. Both of those wins, or both of those losses in conference. They're playing for the Pac-12 championship, baby. Oregon just a game out, tough schedule. USC is my biggest surprise here. I mean, I knew that their schedule was tough, but looking at it, to Notre Dame, against Utah, and then Cal, and then against Oregon, and then Washington. I think those 2 are reversed. Like, that is just a murderer's row. I've seen Lincoln Riley teams kind of collapse before. I know the last year in the Big 12, they didn't have much to play for, and they lost in Bedlam to Oklahoma State. I was there that game. That game was awesome, but nonetheless, still lost. But other than that, I feel bad for Arizona State. I think that they're better than 3 wins. Stanford, I probably don't feel it's better than 3 wins. I don't feel so bad about them. Arizona coming in with 4 wins. That's pretty respectable. Cal makes a bowl game. I think that's pretty cool. Oregon State and Washington State each with 8 wins. USC and UCLA with 9 wins. Great stuff. So that'll do it for the Pac-12. We'll do a separate video where we talk just about the postseason, seeing how the schedule plays out. Now we know who's in our conference championship games. So we do the conference championship games. Who then makes the 14 playoff there? Who would have made a 12-team playoff? We'll see. We'll dive into all of that here after this week. But this is the Pac-12 preview show. I'm Brandon Shanahan. Stick around, man. We got tons of great stuff going on this week. Previewing all 5 power conferences just like we just did. And some outstanding stuff here. Follow me on Twitter at Shanahan. Subscribe on the channel. Listen on Spotify. Give us as many likes and reviews. It helps us out a lot. We appreciate it.